I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to After Thursday, where the SHA thoughts find out and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's a blind blogger, accessibility expert, advocating for more inclusion of people with disabilities through communication and collaboration instead of a compliance game, other than Mr. Maxwell Ivey. Welcome, Mr. Maxwell on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Accessibility advisor.
Sure. So I am Max Ivey. I'm known as the Blind Blogger. I've been educating people about accessibility for almost 2 decades since starting my first website in 2007, where I brokered used amusement park and carnival rides, having just left a career in the carnival business due to our carnival going out of business. And over the course of years, I've learned that I am an expert. I put to use all my many years of lived experience to help business owners leverage the disability community by showing them the many positive benefits of improving accessibility. Because I've learned that business people are much more likely to do things if you can show them a good reason why, as opposed to trying to scare them into it with fears of regulatory penalties or legal actions.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Maxwell. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. And today, let's talk about inclusive design makes your product, services, and content better for everyone. So tell us, Mr. Max, the curb cut effect is a famous example where a ramp for a wheelchair users also benefits parents with strollers. Can you share a less obvious but equally powerful example of how designing for inclusion ended up creating a better experience for everyone?
Right. Well, that's a great example and one of my favorites for in person accessibility. Another good one is the fact that the first versions of talking GPS were built specifically for the blind, and you had to purchase them for several $100s, and you had to update the maps at your house and hope that the maps would still be good when you were out walking around using your talking GPS. But now we couldn't get through our days without GPS on our phones or in our vehicles. So that's a good in-person one. As far as virtual, one of my favorite examples of virtual is what now people now refer to as dark mode on the internet. And many years ago, it was discovered for people who have some vision but have had vision loss that it helps them with eye strain and comprehension if they can invert the colors. So instead of having black text on a white background, you have white text on a black background. And we would refer to that as color inversion. But they discovered that, especially for mobile device users,
make sure you have a stable internet connection.
Especially for mobile device users, that being able to invert those colors makes it easier for you to see the screen on a mobile device, especially in very high or very low light. So the color inversion has now become known as dark mode, and it's pretty much on every website you use nowadays. It's one of those things that was developed for the visually impaired, now helps everybody. Some another example of something like that would be when I encourage people to limit the amount of items on a screen or break their forms up into multiple pages. And those also help screen reader users because it makes it easier for us when we have less items to navigate at a time. But also that does make it easier for people using mobile devices to fill out your forms, navigate to the end where they press that button where they send you their money. So There are many good examples, and of course, that doesn't include the fact that when you improve accessibility, you also raise your profile with the search engines and the artificial intelligence bots that makes it easier for your website to be found by people who actually want what it is that you are offering, whether that be a product or a service. And then of course, that doesn't get to just the huge potential audience that there is out there waiting for businesses that are willing to make the effort to be more accessible.
Mr. Max, for the skeptical leader who sees inclusivity as a cost center, what is the most compelling data or financial argument that demonstrates how inclusive design directly impacts the bottom line?
Okay, so first you have to understand that when you improve accessibility, you improve the user experience of people who don't have disabilities. Quite often, you will find an error with a site, you'll find a frustration point with a site that you wouldn't have discovered without investing in accessibility. That's an important thing to remember. But when it comes to the skeptic, I would say this: can you really afford to overlook an audience of over 1 billion people globally, of over 60 million people in the US alone? Can you really afford to overlook an audience that's highly loyal? One of the things, you know, they say maybe approximately less than 5% of the internet is accessible right now. So if only 5% of the internet is accessible, that means that those companies stand out against the 95% that aren't willing to invest in accessibility. So it gives you a competitive advantage, and especially for smaller, medium-sized businesses trying to compete in an arena where there are larger, more established companies with deeper pockets and longer track records. It can be a way you can attract an audience or maintain an existing audience that some of these other competitors can't do. And one thing I'm learning is that it's easier for a small company or a new, relatively new company to embrace accessibility because they can do it from the beginning, from the ground up. They don't have to go back and fix years or decades of online content in order to become accessible. It's estimated that about $1.3 trillion is spent by people with disabilities. And that's just the person with the disability. That doesn't include their friends, family members, coworkers. That doesn't include their social media followings. That doesn't include news outlets that enjoy posting stories where they emphasize companies doing the right thing as far as accessibility on their products and services or inclusion in the workplace. Uh, it really is a competitive advantage. And another thing that I'm learning from my coding friends is that when you improve a website's accessibility, you have a better website. You have better code. It's easier to update your website going forward. You lower your site load times, which definitely affects whether or not people stay on your website long enough to find out who you are and decide to buy something. There are so many benefits in there. The problem isn't understanding the benefits. The problem is that as a community, people with disabilities, we don't talk about the benefits enough, and we don't talk about them in the right way. We have to get to the heart of the entrepreneur, which is their bottom line. And that's why, to me, loyalty of the consumer group is one of the biggest things about people with disabilities. Because so few companies are making the investment, we believe in supporting companies that are. We'll stick with them through good times and bad times. We'll even overpay, seeing accessibility as a value added proposition. And any business owner, any business teacher, any business student will tell you it is much more profitable to keep your existing customers than it is to constantly have to chase new customers. And accessibility is a way you can build that loyalty.
Interesting, Mr. Max. So, how do we move the conversation about inclusive design from being solely about accommodating people with disability to being a fundamental driver of innovation and creativity for the entire user base?
Right. Well, I think one of the first things we can do is for more people to agree that at some point in our lives we will all have a disability. It may be that it's later in life due to age, where people, as they get older, they have hearing loss, vision loss, or lose cognitive function. It could be trauma, accident, injury, military combat. It could be undiagnosed genetic diseases that don't come upon somebody until later in life. The more we realize that everybody either has a disability at one time earlier in their life was disabled, or at some point later in their life will have a disability, the more we can get away from the idea that a disabled person is different or other than everybody else. And if we can get to that point, if we can get to the point where everybody sees themselves as potentially being disabled at some point in their lifetimes, then we can address accessibility as something that benefits everyone as opposed to thinking of it as something that only benefits a certain segment of the population. And that's one place we really need to work to change the way we talk about disability. And I'm starting to hear people use the phrase differently abled, which I like. Um, Anything we could do to change the conversation from a disability making you somehow other or foreign to everybody else and making it something that everybody will experience at some point in their lives.
Mr. Max, you've said that inclusive design challenges the very notion of an average user. Why is this concept so limiting, and how does ditching it lead to a better podcast or products?
Right. So, as far as there not being a universal user, um, I like to focus my answer in this area specifically on vision loss because it's the area I'm most familiar with, although I do a lot of work to educate myself on other disabilities. When it comes to vision loss, there can be multiple levels of vision loss. You have some people who still have some functional vision. You have some people who still have a lot of functional vision. You have people like me that are totally blind. Among people that are visually impaired, you have two different operating systems, Mac and Windows. On mobile devices, you have another two operating systems, iOS and Android. When it comes to the adaptive technology, you have VoiceOver for Mac products, and you have JAWS for Windows or NVDA for Microsoft products. And then on top of all that, you have the different uh, uh, comfort levels with technology. Some people may have very little vision, but they may be very comfortable embracing new technology. So it makes it very difficult for people to find a one user. And so we really have to focus more on making our product or our service as accessible as possible to as many people of varying abilities as possible. And I know that's highly challenging, but the great thing about it is once you get to the mindset that you're developing for a wide variety of people's challenges and that everybody has a challenge, then it gets much easier. I like to say that everybody is blind about something. I just happen to have a white cane. Everybody struggles with something. They will struggle with something. For some people, it's financial. For some people, it's social. For some people, it's familial. And focusing more on building uh, an inclusive thing that embraces as many people as of varying abilities as possible is the way we're going to get there. And one other thing about this whole deal is that people that are thinking about their websites and they're concerned about the time, the disruption, the money it's going to take. The really cool thing about accessibility is that you don't have to do it all right away. We don't expect you to be perfect overnight. In fact, I don't believe anybody can ever get to 100% accessibility because websites and best practices are always changing. But starting the process, beginning the journey, Interacting with your users, both able bodied and disabled, as well as with the technical people, and bringing in all the available technologies such as automation and artificial intelligence. We bring all that together and we can over time we can build more and more inclusive websites, more and more inclusive products and services. And the truth is, the people that are willing to make the investment now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, they're going to be way ahead of everybody else that's waiting until the government or the courts or some foreign government or some advocacy group forces them to make these same improvements.
Mr. Max, where is the most impactful place for a team to start with inclusive design if they're beginning from zero and feel overwhelmed?
Well, my answer to that is going to be a little different than most people's, because I believe the best place for someone to start is to focus on the most important thing of your business or your website. If we start by making the most important thing the most important thing, then we will weed out many things that either aren't important or don't belong on the main page of a website. And when you focus on the most important thing, for example, if your most important thing is to sell a particular service, then when I come to your website, the first thing I should find out about you is who you are, what you offer, why I should care about you being the person to offer that service to me. Once I determine that you offer a service that I may or may not be able to take advantage of, then I want to see how you operate, references. I want to be able to quickly and smoothly click through to either an opportunity to buy your services or an opportunity to communicate with you further to continue my decision making process to the point where either I decide no, it's not a great fit, or I decide yes, let's work together. So making the most important thing the most important thing. After that, making sure you design for keyboard navigation first, because most people that are using adaptive technology like myself don't have access to the mouse. So keyboard design first. Three would be take a simple design approach. Every time you add something fancy to your homepage, it's another opportunity for you to create an accessibility roadblock for people using screen readers, screen magnifiers, or mechanical switch devices. So even something as simple as a modal that clicks open to ask people for their email addresses can block somebody where they can't continue to your website. They can't get out of your website. They end up either closing your website or closing their browser, and they're most likely not going to come back. And that's a very simple thing that shouldn't cause problems, but it does. So just imagine some of the fancier things like slideshows, like videos, like tables. So start with a simple design approach. And then the fourth thing I would say for people that are just starting from zero is try to take a minimalistic approach. Ask yourself if each item that's on your homepage or a secondary page, does that need to be on your website? Is it serving a purpose? Same thing with the text on your pages. Are these important to communicate my message, or are they just there because I think they should be there or somebody told me I had to have them there? Same thing with images and videos. Quite often people complain about accessibility for images, having to add the alternative text descriptions to them for the visually impaired, for example. And yeah, it can take work, take time, but if you eliminate repetitive photos or images that don't communicate an important message, you have that many fewer images that you have to treat for accessibility by the visually impaired. So those would be my four things. Focus on the most important thing, build with keyboard navigation first, take a simple design approach, and have a minimalistic view about what goes on your website.
Mr. Max, the design process often starts with the user research. How does an inclusive research and recruitment strategy differ from a standard one to ensure We're not just hearing from the usual voices.
Right. So, one thing that makes it easier for people is it's not hard to find out what the best practices are for accessibility. We have the WCAG, which is the Web Content Access Guidelines. We have laws like the Department of Justice 50 or Housing and Urban Development 508. We have the new European Accessibility Act. There's the W3 C school for people learning website design that has information on their site about making things accessible from the beginning. So the information is not hard to come by. And then, as far as making sure the voices are represented, again, that's really just a matter of making yourself available because there are lots of people out in the world who would be willing to share their expertise. Some of them, like myself, would want to get paid for it because that's how we make our livings. But a lot of people just enjoy providing valuable information. There are social media groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. There are nonprofit advocacy groups that have meetup groups. There's even just Meetup itself here in Houston. We have a meetup group online for accessibility and specifically accessibility with WordPress. So there are lots of places to find it. Ideally, a company would reach out through social media or through advocacy groups and try to find individuals that want to be part of their team to review accessibility for a particular disability directly. That would be the ideal option. And it's not hard to find those people once you decide you're willing to look. I mean, there's lots of people. If you did just a basic search on LinkedIn, for example, you would probably find hundreds who are an expert at dyslexia or um, ADHD or autism. So building a team, whether it's a paid team or a voluntary team, is really just a matter of are you willing to invest a little time to identify and reach out to those people and invite them to be part of your process. And one other thing is for companies that are not in a position to do something like that or they don't believe they are, there are a couple of free website checkers that you can run to see how you're doing right now. There's Waze, which is a nonprofit thing. It's totally free and they will not try to sell you a service. There's also a free checker at audioeye.com. That's AUDIOEYE.com. They offer a automation option for reviewing a website's accessibility, and they will try to sell you a service. And then you have people like me. I'm a sole proprietor. I offer consulting uh, focused mainly on manual audits of websites and apps. And I believe the manual audit is the best option. Unfortunately, given the scale of the internet, it's not always practical, but it is a great fit for people that are operating small businesses or people that are in the software as a service field. And some of the smaller government agencies and nonprofits, it's a good fit for if they can find somebody like me who can do a manual audit. But there are lots of ways you can get started. You can build a team. You can get feedback. And just to make sure I don't forget this later, one thing I like to do is to offer the audience from my podcast interviews, like the conversation we're having today, offer them the opportunity to have me review the homepage of their website for free. And that's with no obligation or expectation. I find that if a website's homepage is really good, the rest of the site will be really good. If the homepage is really bad, the rest of the site will be worse. And a lot of small business owners, especially content creators, just really can't afford to do this. So I'm trying to help them, but I'm also trying to help all the people with disabilities that may want to use their products or services. And it's kind of like I said, it's a starting point. It's me trying to give back to my community of other people with disabilities and improve the lives of as many people as I can. So very happy to do a review of the homepage of your website. If that's something you're interested, just reach out to me through my website after the podcast is over.
Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Max, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, my short term goal is to continue growing my business and my reputation. In just the last week, I have been invited to contribute to some new writing projects, and I'm always having conversations with small business owners, either educating them or looking to recruit new clients. So in the short term, I'm wanting to continue to grow my business and also maintain my physical well-being and to enjoy time outside of work. Those are my short-term goals. My long-term goals are, and I generally don't like to speak about long-term goals because I often find out that God has better plans or different ones than I do if I get too far down the road. But I would say my long-term plans are uh, to eventually write for some major publications, to do more public speaking. Would really love to become an international keynote speaker. And I want to continue growing my podcast, The Accessibility Advantage. I believe that the content I'm creating there is going to allow a lot of people to embrace the need for accessibility and show them some of the ways that they can improve accessibility, which every time we improve one website, we can change the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who have a disability. So just continuing long term, continue to become the expert that I am, the thought leader in the field of digital accessibility, and also contribute to some of the more imagined futures of accessibility, such as accessibility in the form of localization, where at some point in the future, instead of us having to design websites to be accessible, the websites will be able to identify the technology a visitor is using and adapt the website to fit the user as opposed to making the user fit the website. So, just long term, I want to be part of the solution and continue to improve accessibility on a global scale.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Max, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Well, if we're talking about people wanting to be entrepreneurs or creators or doing challenging things like I have throughout my career, I would say start by doing something small every day. It even more beneficial if that something small is also something hard. I often find that the little steps, especially in the beginning, are scarier than the bigger ones we will take later. So really, just to get started, to not to try not to put things off until tomorrow because there's never going to be a perfect time for you to take on a difficult challenge in your life. I like to say that there's no sense in waiting till tomorrow, next week, next month, or that mythical day known as someday. So, whatever action you can take today, however small it might be, go ahead and do it. And then, as far as somebody wanting to do things as far as accessibility for their business, I would say start with the W3 school. Start by running a free website check on your website, and again, just make some small improvements in your website every day, and start growing a community of users with disabilities so that you can lean on them to help make even better improvements in shorter periods of time. So those would be some of the things I would suggest to people. And really, one last thing is when we're trying to do difficult things, quite often we will get frustrated. We will have mistakes, setbacks, even failures. We always have to remember to be kind to ourselves when things don't go exactly the way we want to, because you can be doing everything right and still not succeed, or still not succeed as quickly as you want to. Sometimes you may have to pivot and go in a different direction in order to get to where you eventually want to be. But be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't fall into the trap of frustration, depression, anger, because those all lead to quitting. And as W.C. Fields once said, the only way you can lose is to die or quit. So I try to encourage people to avoid the negative talk to ourselves that can cause us to give up.
Yes, don't give up, people. Don't give up. Try and try until you succeed. And Mr. Max, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because
Accessibility
my
advisor.
abstract essay already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, I'm a book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, I'm a food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, I'm a baby podcast law 101, and mental health 101, as well as my Bible verses 101, love letters in fourth season, as well as movie 101 review and music 101 and science 101 and sex 101 in second season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Max, if you could leave our audience with one single actionable principle to make their next projects more inclusive, what would it be?
I would say it's somewhere in your daily life,
Maxwell Accessibility Advisor.
either somewhere in your daily life, either in person or online, you know at least one person that's living
Accessibility
with a
advisor.
disability. That disability could be physical, like mine, or it could be neural. It could be that disability could
Map
be
accessibility advisor.
that they care for older parents, or that they have chronic illness that maybe they don't see as a disability. Find that one person and reach out to them, and with sincerity and humility, ask them to educate you. And once you have one person in your circle, continue to expand out and to learn from others. And one of the great things that we can do in that area is to listen to podcasts. So, but I sincerely encourage you to try to find at least one actual human being you could have these conversations with, because quite often that allows people to ask the really important questions and get the really truthful answers.
And thank you for that, Mr. Max. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Abstract Essay?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I would appreciate it if y'all would visit my website, theaccessibilityadvantage.com, or send me an email, maxwell at theaccessibilityadvantage.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Maxwell Ivey. I would really love to hear what you thought about our conversation and answer any questions you may still have.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Max. EV, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Max, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.